we are open to offering our resources to any pre-med student. I think we're all one big happy family. We offer resources like tutoring, volunteering opportunities, mentorship, anything we can do to help you guys through pre-med tracks here at Northwestern. Like I said, I'm the vice president, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask us after this wonderful speaker. I'd like to introduce Mike Hernandez. He's our president.
Good evening. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone who came out tonight. It is an honor to introduce you all tonight, Dr. Melanie Watkins. Thank you again for coming out. Dr. Watkins is a board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and licensed by the California State Medical Board to practice medicine and psychiatry in the state of California. Dr. Watkins received her medical training at the Stanford University School of Medicine and completed an internship in obstetrics and gynecology at the University of California in San Francisco. Her specialty training in psychiatry was at the University of Nevada in the Department of Psychiatry. She is an employee of Traditions Behavioral Health and works at Contra Costa Regional Medical Center. She's a part-time solo private practice in Walnut Creek, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Melanie M. Watkins.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome and introduction. This has been one of the warmest, nicest group of students that I've met, and I've spoken at several different colleges and universities, and this has been one of the best experiences, so I really appreciate that. And also thank you for providing such wonderful weather. California really appreciates that. And I had a lot of anxiety about coming out here because I thought I'd have to get boots and earmuffs and scarves and all of that, and didn't have to worry about any of that, so that was great. So I'd like to share my story with you all today, hopefully to encourage and inspire you on your path towards fulfilling your dreams. As you heard, I'm a physician, specifically a psychiatrist, and I primarily work at a county hospital taking care of patients with severe mental illness, disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, substance use. I also see patients in my private practice, and I provide therapy for them, and I also enjoy writing and speaking. My life is very busy, very hectic. I'm also a single mother, and I truly enjoy the work that I do. And I think that after spending so many years in training, we should all be able to do the kind of work that we really enjoy. And in fact, my work doesn't really feel like work. But nothing in life worth accomplishing is ever easy, right? I mean, if something's really something that you want to go after, it's never easy, but worth it. Definitely worth it, and I wanted to tell you that. So my story actually begins with a map. I was raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and lived there with my mom, who was a single parent. I had a big sister named Tanya, and she was 10 years older than me, and my mom was very strict. So if Tanya wanted to go out on a date, she had to bring me too, and just to make sure that nothing inappropriate would happen. And so I learned great negotiation skills with her boyfriend, so I was able to get lots of ice cream and Barbie dolls and everything I wanted so that I wouldn't tattle on my sister. But when my sister became 18, she decided to move out of the house. She just decided that our mom was just way too strict, and she wanted to have a little more freedom and be on her own. So after she left, I pretty much felt like an only child. I missed my sister, but I was smart, I enjoyed school, and I was very happy in Phoenix. So fast forward to freshman year of high school. In high school, I felt that I was in the big leagues. In junior high, I really admired the high school students. Some of the boys had mustaches and the girls wore makeup, and I was just so happy to be a freshman with my friends and felt that we were really moving forward with our lives. So to my surprise, my mother said that we were going to be moving, and this occurred at the end of my freshman year of high school, and she said that we were going to be moving to Jackson, Mississippi, way over there. And I asked her why. Why were we moving? I was very happy in Phoenix. I had friends. I was doing well in school. And she thought that we would perhaps have a better life in Jackson, Mississippi. She'd be able to get a job there and make more money. And she thought that she would support us better being a single mom. And so reluctantly, I moved with my mom to Jackson, Mississippi. But my mom would ultimately come to regret that decision. So when we moved there, I experienced the worst culture shock. I actually went to an all-black high school called Callaway, and even though I am black, being from Arizona, the kids teased me about the way I talk, the way I dress. I just couldn't seem to fit in, and it was very frustrating. And I was curious where all the white students were, and I found out that the white students were actually attending a school on the other side of town. And the city felt very segregated to me. It felt like 1961 and not 1991. And I was very frustrated with my mother. I felt that she didn't care about my feelings, and I felt out of place. And one of my classmates who was very kind to me actually, okay, great. One of my classmates who, oh, great, thank you. One of my classmates who was very kind to me invited me to a youth event at her church. And my mom thought that was okay to have me go there. And I told my mom that I wanted to make friends, and I asked her to allow me a little bit of freedom to be able to do that. Well, that was another decision that my mom will come to regret, because that night changed my life forever. So at the end of the youth church event, I saw a young man across the parking lot, and he had on one of those muscle shirts and had the dog tags around his neck and really large biceps. And I knew he was older, but he had to be at least 18 because he had dog tags. He must be in the military. But I didn't know how old he was. And I was 15, and he approached me. And we started a conversation, and he asked for my number, and I said, I really can't give you my number. My mom won't want you to call. And he says, well, you can take my number. You can call me. And at that point, my friend's mom had pulled up in the parking lot, and we walked away very quickly and headed back. But I ended up getting involved with this man, Daryl, and became more and more rebellious. And so I started sneaking out of the house, I started skipping school, and I felt that Daryl was everything to me, that my mom didn't care about me, my classmates didn't care about me, I never seemed to fit in, and I felt that he was really the only person that cared about me in Jackson. And he reminded me of that all the time, that I'm the only one who cares about you, you need to do what I say, you need to be with me, and I'll take care of you. So my mom realized what was going on, and she was getting frustrated with me. And so she had a conversation with my sister in Phoenix. And she said, I need help with your sister, Melanie. I don't know what to do with her. Maybe she should come back to Phoenix for a bit. And so my mom and sister talked, and they made a decision for me to go back to Phoenix. So took the Greyhound from Jackson, Mississippi, back to Phoenix. So that was my third high school, okay, in Phoenix, Arizona. Because Tanya didn't live in the same school district that I was originally in, and so I went to Holder High School. Well, I loved the high school. There were international baccalaureate classes. Are you familiar with that kind of AP? Yeah, so I had great teachers, and that's when I really decided I wanted to become a doctor. My teachers were just really inspiring, and I was happy. My sister was struggling. She was a single mom, but I was happy to be in a little small one-bedroom apartment with her because I loved my sister, I admired her, I had more freedom, I was happy in school, and was doing whatever I could to contribute, babysitting my niece and working hard at McDonald's and trying to do the best that I could in school. Well, my sister and my mom had another conversation. My sister felt very overwhelmed. She was just 25, and she was trying to take care of me and her little one, and they made a decision for me to go back to Jackson. So then I took the Greyhound bus from Phoenix back to Jackson, and there I reconnected with Daryl, and I became pregnant when I was 16. And that was the summer before my senior year of high school. So when I returned to Callaway High School, I was very embarrassed, not only to be returning, but also to be returning pregnant. And I didn't want anyone to know about my pregnancy. I was about 4 months along, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. I had some difficult decisions to make. Do I get an abortion? It was kind of at the point where abortion really wasn't an option. Do I adopt the baby out? Do I raise the baby on my own? Do I try to make it work with Daryl? I didn't know what to do. And so my mom suggested that I talk with my Aunt Bertha, who lived in Kansas. And my Aunt Bertha, she was never able to have children, and she really liked the idea of being able to adopt the baby. And I thought, at 16, that was just a great decision, because that way the baby would still be in the family. I knew the baby would be well taken care of. So the decision was made for us to, well, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. After I went back to Jackson, Mississippi, my mom was frustrated with the whole environment there. So we moved up to Reno, Nevada. So that was my 4th high school there. And then after we moved to Reno, Nevada, the decision was made for me to move to Kansas City, Kansas for my 5th high school. So I moved in with my aunt, and the plan was for her to adopt the baby, and then I would be able to go to school. So I went to a school called TAMS. It was a teenage mother school, TAMS for short, and it was an alternative high school. And what was nice about TAMS was that they allowed opportunities for the students who were pregnant to be able to go to prenatal visits, and also the desks were a lot larger, so more comfortable. They sent our homework, home with us. Like if we had homework, we could just do homework at home through our bed rest for a bit and then come back to school. And so they made all these accommodations for students. But when I was there, I asked my counselor about applying to college, and she said, honey, this is a reading, writing, arithmetic school. We just want to see you graduate. Don't worry about all that. And I was frustrated because my plan was to adopt the baby out, and so I decided to go to the main high school and find a counselor there. Unfortunately, I was able to find one. And I applied to colleges in states that were familiar to me, so Mississippi, Kansas, Nevada, and Arizona. And the plan was for me to give Jonathan to my aunt. But a month before my due date, my mother called. And I hadn't talked to my mom at all. I was very upset with my mother and felt that she had ruined my life. That's how I felt at the time. And she had told me that she didn't think I should go through with adoption plans. She said that she would help me out with the baby. And I really didn't know if I could trust her at the time, because my mom and I, we had a lot of tension in our relationship, and I didn't know what her motives were. I didn't know if this was her way of getting back at her sister, or if there's something else going on. I just didn't believe I could trust her. But I thought about it, and as it got closer and closer to my due date, I decided, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and trust my mom will help me out. And I had to tell my Aunt Bertha, and she was devastated. I mean, she had a special room for the baby, and then also she wrote the baby's name, Jonathan, and had plans to take care of the baby. And so my aunt was very disappointed, but because she still loved me and loved my baby, she paid for us for our plane ticket to fly back to Reno. So no more Greyhound bus. This time we flew from Kansas City, Kansas to Reno, Nevada. So this is a picture of Jonathan and me after we moved back to Reno, Nevada. He was little. So I graduated. I had Jonathan 3 weeks before graduating from high school, and then I moved in with my mom, and she did help me out. And I was in the process of getting ready to start the University of Nevada, Reno as a pre-med student. So I decided to stick with my plans, and I thought that my mom would help me out. And she said that she would, to help me out with studying, not for partying or anything like that, but she would help me out with studying. Well, when I got back to Reno, I had all these thoughts. I have a son, and I really think a black boy should have a father, and how am I going to do this on my own? And I felt very overwhelmed. And so I called Daryl and I said, I'm in Reno now, and I've been thinking about you, and maybe we should try to be a family. And he said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. It's about time you came to your senses. I miss you too, and let's be a family. So then he came up from Jackson, Mississippi, and he moved to Reno, and we got married when I was 17. Now I had to get permission for my mom to get married at 17 because I was underage. And so my mom reluctantly gave me permission to get married, because I told her that I was going to get married next month when I turned 18, so she might as well let me get married. And so she did. We lived in family housing about 15 minutes north of University of Nevada, Reno. And it was really challenging with Daryl. He would drink a lot. He barely could keep a job. And I was struggling. I was trying to do work study and do pre-med. I had 12 credits and trying to work and take care of all of that. And the abuse became worse and worse. It was verbal, it was emotional, it was physical. And I finally got the courage to leave him, and he returned to Jackson. But there I was, I pregnant at 16 and married at 17 and divorcing at 18. And I felt like used goods. I felt like no one else would want me, and just really had low self-esteem and was struggling. And it was hard because with him being gone, I didn't have someone to drive, and so I didn't have a car. And I had to take 4 buses sometimes a day to get Jonathan to the babysitter, then to get to UNR, then get back to the babysitter, and then back home. And this was whether it was snowing, raining, no matter what the weather was, I had to find a way to do it. Fortunately, we were able to get some scholarships, and Jonathan was able to have childcare at the YMCA, which is very close to the campus, and so that made life a little bit easier. But it was still challenging, and Jonathan would play with my organic chemistry molecular models and like draw on my textbooks and stuff, and he'd get sick from time to time, and I'd have to bring him to class, but we'd sit in the back of the lecture hall and we did what we can and what we could, and my friends are very supportive of me, and they would help me out from time to time when they could. Well, I applied for medical school, and yet again, I had another counselor that said, I don't know, your scores are mediocre, you probably should just apply to University of Nevada. It's a safe bet, you'll probably get accepted, but I wouldn't waste your time or money applying to other schools. Well, at the time, the AMCAS, I don't know if they saw this program, but I qualified for a program for low-income students where you could apply for up to 10 schools for free. And so I thought, why not? I'll apply to 10 schools and see what happens. And I applied all over, and I wanted to see what would happen. And I felt pretty confident that I could get accepted somewhere else, not just University of Nevada, which was a fine school, but I wanted to be able to broaden my horizons and see where I could go. And I had a great GPA, I had a 3.8 GPA with all this stuff going on, and I did research, and I was president of MAPS chapter, and involved in my community and so forth. And I thought, if medical, well, I was thinking about Jonathan and applying to medical school and stigma with me being a single parent, and I thought, the medical school doesn't think it's great that I did all of this as a single parent. Maybe that's not the med school for me. And so I applied all over, and fortunately I was able to get accepted at every school that interviewed me, including Stanford. So decided to go to Stanford, and it was challenging making that decision. Some people would think, oh, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, go to Stanford, it's great. But for me, who struggled financially for so long and had some self-esteem issues, it was very hard to see myself there. I wondered if they made a mistake, if they really want me, what was going on. And so I talked with one of my professors. She was an ethics professor. And I asked her what I should do. I told her the schools that I applied to. And she said, well, where do you really want to go, Melanie? I said, well, I'd love to go to Stanford, but it's so expensive. She said, well, I'll help you out. And I didn't know what she meant by I'll help you out. But it turns out this woman paid for Jonathan's child care the whole time I was at Stanford. And it was $1,000 a month. And it was an unbelievable gift. I had no idea that this woman had money, I didn't know what her background was, anything like that. But she really believed in me. And that meant so much to me at the time that, wow, she was really willing to make this investment in me. And that experience taught me a lot, that when people see you working hard, they want to support you, and that the resources are there, sometimes in the most unexpected places. And it's okay to ask for help and guidance, because you never know what the outcome may be. So medical school was hard, and it was like taking 5 OChem classes all at the same time. It was very, very tough. But I felt that it was an amazing opportunity, one that I never took for granted, and I always felt so honored and privileged to be there. And so many people were supportive of me. And the campus, for graduation, they do a couple of interesting things. They have a large commencement ceremony for the entire university, and usually with someone, pretty famous, notable, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey. By the way, you should check out the commencement speeches on YouTube. They're awesome. And they also have separate graduation ceremonies for the professional students. So the medical school, the law school, business school. And they also have ethnic student graduations. So there's Asian graduation, Latino graduation, and Black graduation. So I wanted to show you a little clip from graduation in 2003. And this really helped me move forward. I had real mentors who were physical people there at my school who provided me a lot of guidance and support. And I had virtual mentors, doctors that I probably would never meet. But I read about them, I thought about them. And one of the doctors that really inspired me was Dr. Ben Carson. How many of you have heard of him? Yeah, so he's a pediatric neurosurgeon and an author. And I want to share a few words from Dr. Ben Carson.
I was fortunate enough to have a mother who believed in me when nobody else did. And she refused to allow me to fail. And, she only allowed us to watch a small amount of television, and she made us read books. When everybody else was outside playing, we had to read books. But in the process of reading those books, I read about a lot of people, successful people. And I came to realize that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. It's not somebody else. It's not some outside influence. It's not some environmental factor. It's you and the choices that you make. And once I realized that, poverty didn't bother me anymore because I knew I could change that. Nothing really bothered me anymore because I knew I could change it, whatever it was. And that's the message that I try to get across to other people. It doesn't matter what the circumstances were that you were born in, as long as you have a normal brain. Because the human brain is the most fabulous organ system in the universe. All human brains are. And I can tell you as a brain surgeon, when I open that scalp and I take off that bone and I'm looking at that brain, I cannot tell whether that brain is from Africa or Scandinavia or Iran or South America, because they're all the same. And the fact of the matter is, that's the thing that really makes us who we are. The external stuff is just wrapping. It really doesn't mean anything. I think people put far too much emphasis on the wrong things.
Very inspiring. So I encourage all of you to check out some of his books. One of his books was made into a movie with Cuba Gooding Jr., Pinked Hands. Have any of you seen that movie? Yeah, it was pretty good.
He's coming to campus on Monday, actually.
Oh my goodness. How awesome is that? Can I stay? I have to get back to work on Friday. But so during college, I worked really hard to make ends meet. I was just like the hardest working pre-med student ever. I had like 6 jobs at a time. I was reading books on tape for visually impaired students. I was babysitting. And what was nice about babysitting was that Jonathan had an instant, friend, an instant playmate by doing those jobs. And I could kind of study while the kids were playing. I worked in the library, at the medical school, and I really tried to maximize every work opportunity. So at the medical school, I was able to meet some of the attendings and some of the medical students and pick their brain about applying to medical school. So just trying to maximize every work experience I had. I tutored in subjects that I wanted to become better skilled with, so math and science. By tutoring in those subjects, it actually reinforced and honed my skills. And but I was getting really frustrated. I applied for a lot of scholarships, and I was one of those people, I would apply for every scholarship I remotely qualified for. And I figured, if it takes me an hour or 2 to work on an essay, an application, it's worth it if I get a scholarship for $500 or $1,000. That's going to mean, I have to work less, So I was very diligent about that. And back then, it was really difficult to apply for scholarships because we had these huge books that we had to go through and try to find a scholarship that you were eligible for. Nowadays, you can just get on the internet, but it was a lot more effort back then, and so a lot has changed in 15 years. But even with the scholarships and working, I still always felt broke. There was never enough money. It was so frustrating. But a popular game show was recruiting students in Reno. And they were looking for students to participate, and I thought, wow, I'm gonna try that out. And some of my classmates said, oh gosh, I don't really have time for all that. I have to go to downtown Reno, and it's gonna be crowded. There's gonna be a long line, and I got a million other things to do. I'm not gonna do it. And I thought, well, I'll just bring a textbook and I'll read and just occupy myself while waiting for the audition. Well, I auditioned and I was selected to be on the show. And I learned a very important lesson then, to take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. So here's a clip from the show.
Melanie Watkins, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. From Reno. You're going to school in that part of the country?
I'm a senior pre-med student at the University of Nevada, Reno.
Oh, great. 3-year-old son and
Yes, named Jonathan.
So I look pretty proud of that guy. What do you like to do when you're not busy with him and school? Probably not much time left.
Not too much time left. I like to write in my journal and watch movies.
All right. Do you write like personal stuff? And
Yeah, just a line.
Okay, nice to have you, Melanie. Good luck to you.
So as you can see, I was ready. I had the bright pink dress, I had the fingernails. I could have done something about the hair and the glasses, but you know. But I watched that show every chance I could. When I found out I was going to be on the show, I spent a lot of time watching it after, when I was done with my classes in the evening. I studied Wheel of Fortune, and I was ready when the time came for me to be on the show. Another show that I really enjoyed was the Today Show. How many of you watched the Today Show? Yeah, so I'm really hooked on that. I've been watching that for a while. So back in 1997, Brian Gumbel was replaced by a guy, and no one knew who this guy was. So check out this next clip.
A B? No, sorry. You do have that free spin if you want to use it. Not to, yeah, you do. Okay, pass it on down. You can buy a vowel, spin the wheel. So. 900. F. Nope. Dave, it's your turn. You have $1,100. What do you want to do?
I'm going to buy a vowel.
Okay.
I, please.
Yeah, 2 I's.
That's good.
Yeah, you do. 900.
Let's go for a...
No. Sorry.
10.
Melanie? Yeah, there's an L. $50. What do you have up there?
Katie Couric and Matt Lauer.
Yeah, that's it. I guess he's the new guy on the Today Show. Brian's gone. No one told me. Well, who knew? Who knew? Anyway, Katie Couric and Matt Lauer, I guess they're on in the morning. A lot of us sleep in. You have $450. That's it. Sure, it beats 449. And we have a house minimum of 500, which we'll give you. And we also have some music. It's time for us to get off. Charlie.
So that was pretty funny, huh? So now you all know who the anchors are of the Today Show. Do you know who the two hosts are? Yeah. It's Matt Lauer and Ann Curry. Just in case any of you end up on Wheel of Fortune. So I'll show you one more clip. Can you tell the puzzle?
Hey, Melanie.
Oh my God.
I'm excited, but let's take a deep breath and call a letter.
Could you places to go?
Yes, 1-8.
awesome.
Now, if you can solve the puzzle right now, you win a jackpot of $7,400.
Things to do, places to go, people to see.
So that really helped out Jonathan and me tremendously. So 1997 was one of the best years of my life. Not only was I on Wheel of Fortune, but I also received a scholarship. So one of the scholarships that I applied for was offered by USA Today newspaper, and they still offer the scholarship, so if any of you are interested, I highly recommend you apply. So every year, USA Today announces their top 20 college academic team. And I applied for the scholarship, and my friends said, well, what are the chances of getting a scholarship like that? It's a national scholarship, and I thought, why not? I'm going to go for it. And I had this internal debate again about whether or not to mention Jonathan, and I had had a friend that said, you should talk about Jonathan and all that you've been through and your experiences and so forth. And so I did. I worked hard writing my essay for the scholarship. And I also did a lot of research because I wanted to know who were the students who were selected in the past. I wanted to know what their characteristics were, their background, etc. So I went to the library. In the basement of our library at UNR, there was the microfiche. Do you guys even know what microfiche is? It's pretty funny because microfiche is kind of this old school way of basically storing data. So magazines and newspaper articles and so forth, they can be saved on these microfiches. And so I did a lot of research looking at all of the scholarship recipients for the previous 5 years. And so I worked on my essay, I did my application and sent it in and hoped for the best. And I was selected. And fortunately, there was no major news on February 6, 1997, and instead of putting us in the D section, the life section, which is usually where they put the scholarship recipients, they put John and me on the front page of USA Today. And above the fold and everything, which is like a very big deal in journalism. And so that was an amazing experience because they flew me out first class to DC, and every newsstand, there's Melanie Jonathan, Melanie Jonathan, Melanie Jonathan. I mean, it was really, really amazing. And I was very fortunate to get that scholarship. And that scholarship actually helped to open a lot of doors for me. Not only the money, which was $2,500, but also the opportunity to share my story and during interviews talk about my scholarship and so forth. So, friends in college would say, well, gosh, Melanie, you're so lucky. They kind of just imply that I didn't have to work for these things. Good things always happen to you, And I thought about that and the definition of luck. And Tony Robbins, who is a motivational speaker I really like, he said luck is labor under correct knowledge. Implying that there is effort, and you have to prepare yourself for opportunities that come your way. You have to be ready. For Wheel of Fortune, I showed up at the audition. I learned all that I could about the show, and for USA Today, I did the research and so forth, and worked an application. So there was some effort. Someone else also said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Just again, that luck really is about working hard and being ready. But my favorite definition of luck is a definition from Oprah. And Oprah says, luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And so you have to be ready for those opportunities that come your way. Because we all have opportunities to do some amazing things, and we have to be ready when those opportunities come. So fast forward several years, and some of you know that after medical school, doctors have to do an internship and a residency in order to practice medicine. So I did my internship in obstetrics and gynecology, OBGYN for short, at UCSF. And residencies vary depending on specialty. So pediatrics might be a 3-year residency, OBGYN 4 years, psychiatry 4 years. If you want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, or let's say a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon, you're looking at maybe 11 years. So long, long periods of training. And during my intern year, I was working 80 hours a week, which isn't uncommon. So it's like working 2 full-time jobs and doing 30-hour shifts, and so it's very difficult. And this is my intern class. And as you can see, I'm the flying buttermilk, as my grandma used to say. And there's often, situations where you're the only person of color, you're the only woman, and I just want to encourage you that even if you are the only minority, to take advantage of whatever opportunities come your way and not be intimidated by that. In California, we have the first female, the first African American, and the first Asian American California attorney, general attorney, and she is Kamala Harris. And her mom said that you may be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last. So always make sure that you're giving back, that you're inspiring and motivating others and pulling them along to help them to be successful. So when I was at UCSF, I was working very hard, and I was gaining a lot of weight. And I gained about 50 to 80 pounds or so over medical school and internship and so forth, and it really affected my self-esteem. And it was hard for me to tell patients to lose weight, to eat right, when I was making good choices myself. And I was the heaviest intern, male or female, in our class, and it was very frustrating. And so I had to sort out what I wanted to do about my wage, and then also what I wanted to do with OBGYN, because I wasn't very happy with the specialty, and was doing a lot of emotional overeating and so forth, and just trying to cope and deal with what was going on. So I decided to take some time off, because what I enjoyed most was talking with patients and hearing their stories. I didn't really like being in the OR all that much, and OBGYN is primarily a surgical field, and I really enjoyed talking with the patients and hearing their stories and their stressors. So I decided to switch to psychiatry. But it's amazing because after I made that switch, that's when I started being able to lose the weight. It was like, like this shift. Like, wow, this is really what I was supposed to be doing. But I was so focused on OBGYN, and then finally realized that I was much better suited for psychiatry. So I joined Weight Watchers, I began training, I was running, and at first I could only run like a minute, and then 5 minutes. But then I was able to run a mile, and then 3 miles, and then 6 miles, 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then I was able to, skip that, then I was able to complete a full marathon. And so I lost the weight. I lost about 80 pounds on Weight Watchers. And this picture is from a marathon that I did in Oakland. And so I've done 5 marathons now. Wow. And I don't say that to impress you, but just to impress upon you the importance of believing in yourself, that you set goals and you believe that you can do it, and you talk with people who've done it before. There's always people who've done it before who can help you out. And so that really helped me tremendously to be able to release the weight and move forward in my life. So I thought you might be interested in seeing a couple pictures of John. John has this huge fro that he has maintained for several years now. He's 17 and he'll be 18 in May, and he's hoping to attend my alma mater, Univerisity of Nevada, Reno, which is an awesome school. So I'm hoping that he will do well there. And so I wanted to share a brief story with you. And this story is called The Dot. And it's actually a children's story written by Peter H. Reynolds. And he wrote this story. It's a story about believing in yourself, believing in others, and moving forward with your dreams. And I think it's a nice way to wrap things up. Vashti sat at her chair. She had finished art class and her paper was empty. Her art teacher stared at the paper. A polar bear in a snowstorm. Very funny, said Vashti. I can't draw. The teacher leaned over, looked at Vashti, said, make a mark and see where it takes you. Well, Vashti took her marker, she did a strong jab, made a mark, and said, there, done. The teacher studied it carefully. She gave Vashti the paper and said, sign it. Well, Vashti said, I can't draw, but I can definitely sign my name, so I'll do that. Well, the next day, when Vashti went to school, she saw the dot, her dot, framed in swirly gold, hanging above her teacher's desk. Well, Vashti thought, I can make a much better dot than that. So Vashti used her never-before-used watercolor set, and she made red dots and purple dots and blue dots. She mixed colors and made all types of dots. She made big dots. She even made a dot without drawing a dot. So the art show was a few weeks later, and people were very impressed with Vashti's work. A little boy approached Vashti. Wow, your work is so awesome. You're an artist. I really wish I could draw. Well, the little boy said, I can't even draw a straight line. And Vashti said, here, how about you try? So the boy's hand shook as he drew the straight line. Vashti studied it carefully and closely. She handed it back to him and said, please sign it. So this story was written by a man who dedicated this book to his 7th grade teacher and said, thank you for helping me make my mark. So one of the things I really enjoy is having an opportunity to share my story with students. I speak at high schools and colleges, and I'm inspired by their stories, and I really like sharing my story and trying to provide words of encouragement. And I wanted to leave you with a quote. This is my favorite quote, and some of you have read it before. It's very inspiring. It's worth hearing again if you've already read it. It's by Melanie Watkins. And it says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I want to encourage each of you to use your gifts to make a difference in your lives, your community, and your world. Thank you. So I'm open to any questions that maybe you may have. Yes?
When you talked about your mom not being very supportive, and then, the last time that your mom talked to you, that she asked to take care of your son, exactly how did that affect you as you progressed through your academic career? Hopefully now you're much closer to your mom.
Oh, yes, I'm now very close to my mom, and actually Jonathan was with her during winter break, which is nice. And we had tension that I think a lot of young women have with their mom, and I think that being pregnant magnified that. My mom wasn't ready to be a grandmother. She was young. She wasn't really, ready for all of that, and I think I did put a lot on her. But over time, we became closer. She was very firm, though, about watching Jonathan only for studying, not for partying, not for socializing, and that was tough, and I felt that I missed out on a lot of opportunities with friends. But ultimately, it was really what was best for me, because I learned how to be creative, how to be more independent, and how to, come up with resources. When I was in medical school, I didn't have any family around, and so sometimes I would fly Jonathan out to my mom. Jonathan went to fly on his own at age 5, and he did it just fine. I was bawling, and he did just fine on Southwest. It's like a 30-minute flight from the Bay Area to Reno. And so she would help me out during finals and so forth, even when I was in medical school. But the day-to-day challenges were hard, and so I had to become creative. And so by not having her there, I had to be creative and think outside the box. So one of the things that I did was in medical school, I really wanted Jonathan to have positive male role models, and so I put an ad in the Palo Alto Daily, the local newspaper, and looking for men who were interested in babysitting. I specifically wanted a male to help me out with Jonathan, and so I had a couple of boarders who basically, I didn't pay them, they didn't pay me, but they would watch Jonathan in exchange for a free place to stay. And so Jonathan and I shared a room. He was 6, 7, 8 years old, and it worked out well. And then the boarder had his own room, and he would, they would take Jonathan to baseball games and cook and do all kinds of fun stuff with him. And so it really was a win-win situation. But I think if I had my mom right there, I wouldn't have even thought of that as an option. And so it really taught me indirectly to be more creative with child care solutions. Yes?
You said on Wheel of Fortune that you wrote in a journal. So did you write poetry or what did you write?
I wrote everything. I mean, it's funny because when I was younger, I read The Diary of Anne Frank, and I really loved that book. And so I started keeping a journal when I was 12 years old. But I was afraid that my mom would read it, and so I would tear it up. So when I became 16 and my mom found out I was pregnant, I figured, well, she knows everything about me now. I'm just going to write whatever I want to write. So I really encourage each of you to keep a journal. I have journals since I was 16 years old, and it's amazing. I mean, I can tell you exactly what I was doing this date in the year 2000, this date in the year 1997. I can tell you roughly what I was doing around that time because I have these journals, and I think it's such a great gift for yourself because I'm able to really see, my progression, my development, and how I went through so many obstacles and struggles, and how, I was able to get through them. And it's just really a great gift. And actually, I wrote a memoir using those journals and really able to keep my voice at the time, because as an adult, looking back in your life, you want to kind of edit things and say, oh, did I really mean to think that? Well, you thought what you thought when you were a kid. And so in my memoir, I really try to keep my voice, exactly how I felt about my mother and how I felt about my body and life and so forth. And so it's been really nice to have those to refer to.
After you went through Wheel of Fortune and got on USA, the paper, and so many opportunities, did Daryl ever try to reconnect with you?
Yeah, so he did. So a couple years, when John was a couple years old, the Wheel of Fortune, all that stuff had happened, he called me, which was kind of just random out of the blue. And I think that he probably saw me on the Wheel of Fortune. I think that's what triggered the call. But it was just a brief conversation, that was it. And actually, Jonathan's never met his father. I haven't seen Daryl since January '95. And that's been challenging, Father's Days and Christmas and, over the years. And what I tried to explain to Jonathan was that, families are different and that, he wasn't really ready to be a dad. And I've kept the door open, so to speak. So if Jonathan wants to see him, I'm totally going to fly with Jonathan in Mississippi and we'll make it happen. But I think he just may need some time. He's not quite there yet. But definitely, I would like for him to meet him someday.
Do you have any tips for getting through the academic rigor?
Oh, do I have tips? I have plenty of tips. So, there are so many things that I did to help me. Primarily for me, I believe in God, my higher power, and I just encourage each of you to have some kind of spiritual connection, and whatever you want to call this being, really use that. So when I went through a struggle, I always thought, gosh, why is God having me go through this? And I would do what we call reframing. So instead of being one of those people who says, gosh, why does this always happen to me? Nothing ever goes right. I would say, what am I supposed to learn from this? Is this trying to teach me to be more patient? Is this trying to help me to learn more about how to deal with a difficult challenge or how to be more resourceful? And so I always try to reframe things. And that was something I learned how to do early on. I also read lots of inspirational books, and I still do to this day. I love inspirational quotes and books, and in my office, I have inspirational quotes and pictures and images all over. And for me, I try to just surround myself with positivity and also being careful of your peer group, because someone once said that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you think about who you're spending your time with, you're going to basically rise or fall to level your peer group. So if you have peers that are academically strong, they study, they're dependable, reliable, you're going to rise to the occasion because you want to keep that peer group. But if you have the kinds of friends who are like, I don't really like studying, I'm just going to relax, I'm going to study later, blah, 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 blah. To be able to hang with those peers, you may come down a bit and not be as academically focused and driven. So I was very careful who I chose to surround myself with. And for me, really the older students, when I was an undergrad, I hung out with older students because these students would often, have their own career and then decide to come back to school, and they were very motivated. They were serious about what they were doing. So I chose a lot of them as my study partners, and that was an important decision to make. And the fact that I would have to hire a babysitter to go study, if people were just doing the small talk, how it is sometimes in a study group, and it takes forever to start actually studying, and people are just talking about professor or whatever. I hated that because I was paying money to get a babysitter to be there. So I only wanted to be with people who were serious about studying. So that was very important. Also too, I wanted to keep up with current events, and that's important in my life now. So if a patient brings up a topic, what's going on in politics, the world, etc., try to know generally what's going on in the world. Reading the paper or just looking at now you can just look on the internet and find out what's going on each day. But having a general idea of what's going on so that you can have conversations with anyone on any topic. Those are the first tips that come to mind that were helpful. Believe in yourself and having people who will give you that encouragement and support. So, mentors like Dr. Thornton, who paid for Jonathan's child care, she was an amazing person for me. And the fact that she put her money into, she made an investment in me, that meant a lot. I can't let her down. I can't let myself down. I've got to keep doing this. And also I spent a lot of time, volunteering. spending time with doctors in the community. I would do what are called cold calls. So business people call them cold calls. So basically, you go through Yellow Pages or whatever. I don't use Yellow Pages anymore. Go through the internet, on the internet, and look for doctors in whatever field you're interested in, considering. So when I was pre-med, I looked through and I saw which doctors were, and I was interested in lots of different fields, so family practice, pediatrics, etc. And I would ask them if I could spend a day with them or half a day. And many of them said yes. I was surprised. And they would usually treat me to lunch, which is cool too. And just to hang out with them and shadow them in their practice, and you'd be amazed at how many doctors are willing to do that. And I do that too. I ask my patients, is it okay if I have a pre-med student sit in? And the pre-med student really likes it. And the patients, sometimes they're really open to that. They like that too. So, and that's a great way to get a mentor too, and someone who may potentially write you a letter of recommendation, which you'll need down the road, or for scholarship you're applying for. So just trying to make those connections really helps.
So for a student who's in medicine and who already applied to medical school, they're in the interviewing process, what advice would you have for students who are at the interviewing stage?
The interviewing stage. Okay, so that was challenging for me because financially I was thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to afford to travel to all these places? So what I did was made sure to try to do the best I could to kind of group my interviews together, so I wouldn't end up flying to the same areas twice. So that helped financially. I also tried to, if it was possible, to interview at the schools that I was really, really interested in, kind of midway through, because the first couple interviews, you're nervous, you're not sure what to expect, what's going on. And at the end, you're kind of burnt out. You've done so many interviews. You're just like, oh, you're kind of sick of hearing yourself talk. So in the middle, I think that's really where you have still good energy. You kind of know how the interview process works. You feel more confident. I recommend getting business cards. I had business cards made up. They don't have to be fancy. You can do like Vistaprint or whatever. But it's kind of a nice touch, and it's professional. Of course, writing thank you cards, kind of old school, but it goes a long way. Doing a handwritten thank you note, and send that off like immediately so you don't forget. And that's a really nice touch. I had a briefcase, and that made me feel just more cool. I'm just having a briefcase and walking in there. But had a really nice bag, feeling confident, having everything nice and neat and organized. Those are the first things I can think off the top of my head. Also mock interviews. How could I forget that? Mock interviews. So I had a lot of people interview me. So doctors, medical students, and medical students are cool. I mean, they were in your position. They want to help out. So I would just ask them, can you do a mock interview with me? And you can even give them a book. Like when I was pre-med, there's a book it's by this guy named Iverson. I don't know if he still does the books. But it had everything to know about interviewing for medical school. And he had a section with lots of questions. That was really helpful. And so I would give the medical student or the doctor, whoever was interviewing me, doing the mock interview, I'd give them that so they'd have some questions to ask, and they kind of add their own questions. But this is also an area where being up to date on current events is really helpful, because you never know what the interviewer is going to ask you about, and you don't want to act like you can't talk about whatever topic. So you want to generally know what's going on in the world. They may ask you what's the last book you've read. That's a popular question I was asked interviewing. Why do you want to go to this particular school? And know specifically why you want to go to that particular school. I mean, do your research and know what it is about that program that you really, really like. And being respectful, asking the interviewer questions about himself or herself. People usually like to talk about themselves, and they may be kind of surprised that you're asking questions about them, and they'll kind of like that. So having a genuine interest in their background, and if you know who your interviewer is ahead of time, that's awesome, because you can Google them. So sometimes some of the schools will give you names of interviewers. Sometimes they don't. You don't know who's going to interview until you get there. But if you're able to Google them and know about their latest research and publications, that really helps. Any other questions on pre-med, weight loss, marathoning, anything like that? How to do a game show? Yes?
Well, the game show part in a second.
Okay.
Oh, actually, yeah. Did you win Wheel of Fortune?
Okay, so Wheel of Fortune was very interesting. So what they do is you fly to Culver City, And with game shows, they don't pay for your flight. You're basically making, you know, the investment to fly for the opportunity to be, you know, on the game show and so forth, and maybe to win some money. Shows like, you know, the Oprah Winfrey Show, Jerry Springer, whatever, they pay for your travel and your hotel or whatever. But game shows, you cover your own. So I was really hoping I would win because that was expensive, you know, arranging the flight to get down to LA and go to Culver City. So I got there, and what they do is they have you bring 2 sets of clothes because they actually record 5 shows in a day. So you have the show for the first day and for Friday. If you win during the Monday through Thursday shows, you come back for the Friday show. So I did really well on that first show, so I was brought back for the Friday show at the end of the day in a different, you know, outfit. Well, I went against these 2 housewives, and they were good. They were really good. So I won like 1 puzzle. But it was really cool to have the opportunity. So all in all, I won about $18,000. And that was great. It was so helpful. Yeah. Yes?
And usually this is a question that comes from a pre-med kid, but like when you went through school and you were applying to medical school, like did you feel like your MCATs were really good, and as far as like your academics, were they just like mediocre as in like really bad, or mediocre as in like, no, they're really good?
Okay, so medical school admissions committees want the whole package. They're not just looking at the MCAT scores, they're looking at everything. So leadership, research, you know, if you can, you know, research, academics, community involvement, volunteering, they look at your essay, your personal statement, I don't know what you guys call it now, personal statement. So the MCAT scores are just a piece of that big picture. And you really don't want a school that's going to only be looking at your MCAT scores. I think if your MCAT scores are only so-so, you want to have a really strong GPA. And if your GPA is only so-so, you want to make sure you get butt on the MCAT. So, you know, it's really the whole picture. And for me, you know, it was challenging. I took a review course and everything, and some folks from my church helped me out, and also one of my mentors helped me out with paying for that. And my scores were just so-so, but I had all the other stuff that I needed to have, and so I kind of felt like, gosh, you know, if I can just get that interview, they'll like me. I know they'll like me. I just have to get that interview, you know. But some schools just were not interested. Like Emory, no med school interview, no residency interview, never any love from Emory. So they have their own criteria, what they're looking for, and so that's that. But, you know, cast a wide net, you know, because what do you have to lose? I mean, you know, financially, yeah, it's an investment, but you never know.
When you switch your residencies, is it common in the medical community for people to switch?
Very, very uncommon. I mean, it was a huge decision to leave because people would give like their right arm to get to UCSF. It's actually a really good program, especially for OBGYN. And so that made it especially hard to leave. And speaking of leaving, if some of you need to leave, it's okay. You're not being rude or anything, so some of you need to leave. So what happened, I went through internship, and people said, you know, Melanie, it's okay that you're unhappy. You know, internship years run for everybody. You know, the second year would be so much better. Second year sucked. It was really bad. It was really bad. I mean, I had the interns to take care of, the medical students, and also I had the chief resident, you know, and just filling sandwich and trying to do many things at once. It just didn't feel right. You know, when I was in medical school studying, it was hard, but I felt like I was doing the right thing. You know, like, okay, it's a struggle, but I know I'm supposed to do this. But OB/GYN residency didn't feel like that. It was just too much of a struggle. And so I started second year, and then I left after 4 months, which is a horrible thing to do because basically the co-residents have to cover the call, the shifts, and so forth. And so it was an extremely difficult decision. And I knew that I was potentially letting my co-residents down. But they understood, and they were supportive, and then I made the switch to psychiatry. And it was just like, wow, you know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, you know? It felt really right and really good. But it was a really tough decision, but it was the right one for me. Yes?
Actually, I apologize for my tardiness. I just came from class.
No worries.
Let's get to this talk. But my first question is, what type of community leadership activities did you do, and what type of research did you do?
Okay, great question. So when I was in undergrad, I did some bench research. So I had to inject these rats with cyanide and just pulverize their livers and all this. Oh gosh, it was painful for me and the rats.